Now this presentation is going to focus on teaching you how to get more bang from your marketing bucks. We're going to help you find bargain prices for various forms of media, including print media, radio, and TV. I'm going to talk about 3 general ways you can use to get killer advertising deals. The first one is going to focus on simple negotiation skills. The second will focus on buying advertising in bulk. And the third will entail bargain shopping. Now, due to the amount of information that I want you to have in these 3 areas, this will be a 2-part presentation. Part 1 will focus solely on negotiation skills, and Part 2 will focus on buying in bulk and bargain shopping. Now, let me start by giving you a brief overview of these 3 critical areas. First, negotiation skills. What I want you to realize is that most media companies are getting killed these days. Now, you may think the economy has been tough for the typical small business owner. Well, I assure you it has been 10 times worse for media guys. They're experiencing the domino effect where business owners are holding back the checkbook, so to speak. They're not spending money on marketing right now, and the media outlets are really having some major issues as a result. In fact, there has been some relatively significant landscape changes that have occurred as a result of the lousy global economy. Now, we'll get into that when we get into discussing bargain shopping. But here's the good news. There are now opportunities available these days that just didn't exist a few short years ago, particularly in print media. Most media companies desperately need your business, and that's opened the door to opportunity for those of you that have proper negotiation skills. So I'm going to teach you several insider secrets when it comes to negotiating with media companies so that you will be able to take advantage of the current financial crisis in the media industry these days. Now, the second area I want to cover with you involves buying in bulk. You can lock in great prices by committing to more marketing over a specific time frame. I mean, let's face it, buying in bulk is just plain common sense. This tactic has been around forever, but I'm going to point out some ways for you to really take full advantage of this in a more productive and cost-effective way. Then area number 3 will be bargain shopping, knowing how and where to find bargain closeouts, remnants, options, per inquiry advertising, things like that. I'll give you some specific insider tips on each of those topics. So let's get started. Let's begin with negotiation skills. Now, like I said earlier, it's been a brutal couple of years for the media companies. We need to understand that advertising is based on supply and demand. Consider this example. When an airplane takes off, if the seats aren't full, that airline is never going to have the opportunity to sell those empty seats again. All of that potential revenue is gone forever. Well, media companies are no different. Most of the time, they have unsold inventory. And when those advertising slots go unsold, every day that passes is costing them money. And I mean a lot of money. Radio, TV, and print media have a really strong interest these days in getting as much of their advertising inventory sold as possible. And this is now an opportunity that you can take great advantage of. But I want you to also think about this. When newspaper advertising is slow, or the radio station has unused inventory just sitting there with no takers, the individual media reps that are responsible for selling that inventory aren't making any sales commission. And typically, these are the people you're going to be negotiating with for your media advertising. You don't negotiate with organizations and entities. You negotiate with people. Remember that the media rep you're speaking with has a personal income that is tied to that sale, and it is very difficult for them to say no when you place an offer on the table. But here's the bottom line. You're going to get some good deals if you're willing to go out there and just ask for them. Now, I'm going to tell you that in my own experiences coaching small business owners, negotiating really comes down to personality. Some people are very good at negotiating win-win deals. It's just in their personality to go out and negotiate a good deal that works for both parties. For others, well, just not so much. And that's okay, though, because what really matters is planning and preparation. Now, I want to provide you with some proven, excuse me, I want to provide you with some proven and tested techniques that will get the job done for you when negotiating bargain deals with any media company. Now, some of these might not fit your comfort level, and that's okay. I want you to consider the techniques I'll show you and then select the one or ones that you feel most comfortable with. My job is to show you what works and what will allow you to get the most bang for your advertising dollars. Now, the first technique, I just simply call it shock and awe. Let me outline the specific steps to take when using this tactic with a media rep. First, I want you to determine how much you're willing to spend for advertising. Step 2, cut a check for that exact amount and make it out to the media outlet. Number 3, meet with your rep and explain your rationale for the price that you're offering. Fourth, hand them the check. Handing them the check is the real key to this tactic. And then step 5, if they refuse your offer, take the check back from them and tear it up, literally. Now listen, I said you might not be comfortable with some of these tactics, but I can tell you from firsthand experience that this makes a solid psychological impact on that media rep. That gesture is dramatic and catches them totally off guard, and it emphasizes your seriousness in this negotiation. In fact, let me give you some examples. The first involves a client negotiating with the Yellow Page rep. This client was paying $2,500 each month for 5 ads. One was a full-page ad that was working well, and they had 4 smaller ads that really weren't working at all. Now, when I say they weren't working, that doesn't mean that the client wasn't getting any calls at all, but it was very close to that. So they were spending $30,000 a year and simply not getting a good return on that investment. Well, we evaluated the one full-page ad and determined that it was working at a reasonable level, but we also felt that we could take those exact same marketing dollars and invest them somewhere else and get the same or possibly a better return. So we weren't afraid to leave the Yellow Pages behind if it came to that. Now, that's one of the major points to consider when negotiating with any media company. Are you comfortable that you can invest in other forms of marketing in the event your negotiations don't pan out? You have got to be prepared to walk away for good in some cases, and this client was. They didn't feel that they had to be in the Yellow Pages, and we knew that going into these negotiations. So here's what happened. The sales rep came in and actually told the client that there was going to be a price increase. All of their ads were going to go up to $2,800 per month. So here's what the client told the sales rep. They made this real simple. They would be willing to pay $1,000 a month for one full-page ad and one of the small ads, or they would invest their advertising dollars elsewhere. That's it. We're done. This client no longer felt that they needed their book. So the sales rep predictably says, well, we can't do that. Here's our policy, and there's an increase this year, and quite frankly, you're lucky that we're even going to give you this. And then he started to say things like, maybe we could do a little something extra here for you, and maybe we could add in a little extra value here, basically just giving this client the runaround. Well, the client listened politely and then said to the sales rep, look, I don't think you understand. Here's $1,000. Here's the check made out to your company, and that's all that I'm willing to spend. You can either take the offer for the full-page ad plus a small ad, or I'll take this money and give it to your competition at the radio station where I'm currently running my ads as well. It really doesn't matter to me because I'm already getting a good return on my investment there. I'm considering getting into some other stations anyway. I'm already doing well on 2 stations, and now I've got my eye on a 3rd. If you don't want this deal, just let me know. And honestly, it's no big deal. My feelings won't be hurt, and I'm not going to think you're a jerk. I'm just going to take the money elsewhere. Well, guess what? Within 24 hours of him saying that, the deal was done. Another example, similar to this, involved a local newspaper. This client was paying $3,000 a month, but their ads had actually quit producing results a year earlier. They were still getting some calls, but they had been getting 15 to 20 calls per week for their $3,000 a month the previous year. That means they were averaging between $40 to $50 per lead during the good times. Now it had dropped down to 3 or 4 calls a week, which equals $187.50 to $250 per lead. Well, their ROI no longer justified the expense. It just wasn't worth $3,000. So we took a little bit different tactic on this one. This client told the rep, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay your paper $80 a lead for as many leads as you can get us. By the way, this is called per inquiry advertising. For every lead inquiry that we get, we'll pay your paper $80. Now, this is easy to track by using traceable phone numbers through services like Who's Calling or other similar types of services. We will give the paper $80 for every lead the ads in your paper generate for us, no matter how many leads you produce. Now, why would this client favor this type of arrangement? Well, because they determined that was a good price for them to pay per lead. So here's what this client did. They looked over the total amount of marketing dollars that they could afford to spend all at once, and that total came up to be $15,000. They predetermined that they could make a substantial profit on that $15,000 marketing investment if that investment generated a minimum of 187 leads. So $15,000 divided by 187 leads equals $80 per lead. So that's how they arrived at that number. And by the way, it may take the paper a couple of months to generate those 187 leads. This client doesn't care how long it takes, since they are only paying for every lead the paper generates. The client wrote out a check for that amount, called up their sales rep to request a meeting, and at that meeting handed them the check for $15,000. Now remember, this client could afford that $15,000. If all they had at the time was $5,000, then they would have offered that instead. The point here is to offer the media rep as much money as you can afford to spend at the time. Make the amount of that check as big as you can possibly make it. Now why? Well, think about that sales rep. How much of that $15,000 is their sales commission? The industry average is 8%. So let's do the math. 8% of $15,000 is $1,200. And if their commission is 10%, well, that $15,000 check represents $1,500 in their pocket. Whatever the percent is, that rep is looking at a check that's going to put a lot of money straight into their pocket. So here's what actually happened at the meeting. The sales rep wasn't the brightest guy on the planet. He basically started with the excuses, saying things like, well, I know we can't do this because of blah, blah, blah. So the client took the check back from the rep, tore it up into tiny pieces, and quietly placed it in an ashtray sitting on the table. That one dramatic step really caught this rep's attention. Then the client thanked the rep for their time, said how sorry they weren't going to be working together again, and left the room. The sales rep literally sat there staring at their own commission check lying in pieces in this ashtray. The very next day, the paper sales manager called the client and accepted the deal. He said, absolutely we can do that deal, not a problem at all. Now, this client is getting leads for $80 each and can sleep easier at night knowing they will make money from every lead they receive at that predetermined rate. Now, this is something that you are going to want to think about for your business. And please note that if the situation calls for you to tear up the check, you don't do it maliciously or in anger. It's a positioning statement you're using to make an emphatic impression on the rep. And believe me, it works. The media rep has just indicated they aren't willing to complete the deal. So you're going to add the exclamation point that you're willing to end the talks right there by not just withdrawing your offer, but removing the money completely from the discussion. Now, in the past, per inquiry advertising hasn't generally been available. But if you understand the current dire situation that exists in most media companies these days, this is something that most of these guys will now consider doing, especially if you go into the meeting armed with specific facts and figures that justify that the price you're offering is fair to both the media company as well as your company. Now let me explain what I mean here, since this is the key to making this tactic work properly. You always want to make sure that the value proposition you're outlining to the media company is reasonable. Let's look into the parameters from this example with the paper. First, the client was handing them a check for $15,000. Now that showed them that the client was indeed serious. Money makes for a powerful statement, and it says loud and clear that if you are interested in talking about ways we can both make this marketing thing work so money can be made for both of us, then I'm willing to give you a lot of money up front. Then explain your rationale behind your proposal. I'll pay you $80 per lead, and that's what I can afford to spend and still make enough profit to warrant this type of substantial investment with your paper. Our closing ratio is roughly 30%. And if I get $80 leads, when I divide that by 30%, it's costing me about $266 for every deal that I close. Now, I can make money at that level, but right now, your paper is only generating 12 leads for me per month. Let's do the math. $3,000 divided by 12 leads per month equals $250 per lead, divided by my 30% closing rate equals $833. I can't make money at that level. See, by showing them my numbers, there's a rationale established that begins to frame the proposal. This now makes sense to the media rep. They realize this isn't something that was made up or produced out of thin air. It's clear, it's rational, and it's a fair price that's being offered to the newspaper. That paper doesn't want that $15,000 walking out of their office. They will make a deal. And in this case, it's the client that holds all the cards. But remember that one key point. You must be willing to tear up that check and walk away. But that's much easier to do when you know your numbers. Listen, if the paper isn't willing to work with you to ensure your profit from their services, then you're better off walking away from any other deal they may try to sell you on. Make them show you how the numbers will favor you if they present a counteroffer. And one more consideration here. You may be thinking that in this example, wouldn't this client have been better off to go into that first meeting and try to lowball the paper? Shouldn't they have offered $60 per lead instead of $80? Well, you can do that, but here's my thinking on this. If you're okay with $80 and the paper accepts $80, don't get caught up wondering if you could have gotten $60. Who cares? Win-win relationships work best long term. Keep the paper happy and keep the arrangement win-win. Listen, none of us are in business to rip people off. We're not trying to get garbage deals that suck for them but work for us. Those deals never last. We want media partnerships that will last for a long time. Now keep in mind that if you go to a media company that is not struggling right now, then you aren't going to be as successful with this tactic. But do your best to understand the marketplace. If you want to offer a deal to your local media outlets, call them and inquire if they are currently offering remnant advertising at the present time. If they say they have availability, that's a great indicator that this tactic may serve you well. Get a feel for how things are going, and then go in accordingly. You've got to understand your negotiating counterpart and what their situation is before you can really be effective. Now, earlier, I said that I wanted to discuss buying in bulk in our next presentation, but let's talk about buying in bulk as it relates to today's topic, negotiating. Buying in bulk is the oldest and surest way to get a good deal. My advice is that it's best to use a publication or media outlet that you're already familiar with and have gotten results with in the past. Just remember that the media reps are starving, and you have the most control in this relationship because you have the money. This is the oldest negotiation line in the book. It's called, "It's my money, so let's negotiate." Here's what you're going to discover. Media reps seldom, if ever, turn down your money. So let's set up a specific situation. Let's say you've been buying advertising with a specific media outlet for the last 5 years. You meet with your sales rep and you use this script. "Look, John, I really like working with you. We're good friends and I like advertising in your publication. or possibly with your station, whatever the situation is. And as you know, it's been working pretty well for us. But with the current economy, our budget has tightened up considerably, and it's now to the point where we have to look at all of our expenses, especially advertising. Our results just aren't as good as they were in the past, and our margins are now much lower, so we have to be more frugal. We've been paying you X dollars for Y amount of space, and it's simply not producing the results we need to justify our investment with you. I'm here to see if we can work something out so we can remain a long-term advertiser with you. Now, understand the psychology in play here. You have just positioned your financial situation front and center to this rep, but that isn't what they're thinking about right now. Their entire financial situation, including their boat payments, their kids' orthodontic payments and college funds, their retirement, is all flying around right in front of their face. Well, this is where you say, look, if you can sell us the same space we currently have now for half our current price, we can make the numbers work. In fact, let me show you the numbers. We've been paying $5,000 a month for a full-page ad every day in your newspaper. If you can sell us the same full-page ad for only $2,500, we would be willing to sign a written commitment for 1 year, or whatever you determine to be a safe amount of time, keeping in mind that the longer the commitment, the greater your chance of success will be with this tactic. Then you continue. If you can't agree to this, I completely understand, but I am going to forge a long-term relationship with you or a different publication or perhaps the local radio or TV station. Someone is going to work with me and give me the pricing I need to be profitable. See, this is the same thing as the shock and awe. It's just done in a different way. What we're doing here is bargaining, using a long-term time frame as our collateral. Now, why are we doing this? This is simply adding an additional negotiating parameter which allows us to increase our chances of getting what we want. Instead of focusing on the amount of space, such as 1 page every day in the previous example, or the price of $2,500 versus $5,000, we now have a third negotiating component, which is the time frame we're willing to commit to. We can typically push down the price of the advertising as long as we're willing to extend the length of the contract. Now, just as we said before, you've got to let them know you're serious. You're ready to sign a contract right now. You can offer them a lower deal if you prefer, but leave yourself some negotiating room. And just as important, you want to negotiate an opt-out if certain conditions occur in the future. In other words, we're willing to commit to paying the $2,500 per month for an entire year. However, if our results fall to less than X, and you would have to figure out what X represents in sales, then we have the right to opt out. You could soften this approach somewhat by adding a 30-day notice clause in the contract, which you could position that even when results are poor, you would be willing to notify your sales rep and give them 30 days to increase your lead flow back to an acceptable level before you would elect the opt-out option. Also, don't be afraid to ask for extra bonuses to accompany your long-term commitment. These bonuses may include a banner ad on their website if that's appropriate for your business, or negotiate with them to send out an endorsed mailer for you, or perhaps ad space in their special sections. It all comes down to negotiations. There's one additional consideration that belongs here when discussing negotiation skills. If your margins will support it, ask the media outlet if they would be willing to negotiate a contingency agreement. For example, let's say you're a coach or a consultant and you want to advertise on your local cable stations. The cable company has quoted you $2,500 to run a modest number of ads on their stations. As a coach, you sell a popular low-end coaching service to small business owners for $500 per month. You have documented proof that your average coaching client stays with you for an average of 18 months. Now, you decide you would be more than happy to allocate $200 of every $500 monthly coaching client in exchange for a significant amount of TV advertising. And that $200 would be an ongoing commitment for as long as that client remained in your program. In other words, you would be willing to pay the cable company $200 per month for every $500 coaching client they generate for you. And that $200 per month continues to get paid to them for every month that new client remains a client. So let's run the numbers here. Each client's average lifetime value equals $9,000, which is their $500 monthly fee times 18 months. You would be willing to pay the cable company $3,600 of that. Do you realize that through the power of TV, along with the cable company being properly incentivized through an arrangement like this one, they could position your ads on the most coveted small business owner viewed stations during prime time viewing and generate a multitude of new clients every day? Consider just modest numbers here. If the cable company generated just 3 coaching clients every week, which is ridiculously low, that would average out to 13 new clients per month. The cable company would make $2,600 from this contingency arrangement versus the $2,500 fee they would have normally charged you for their normal advertising rate. Now granted, they are giving you special consideration with their ads that you would not have received under their normal agreement. But stay with me here. During this first month, the cable company made $100 more in profit than if they would have gone with their typical contract. But by accepting your contingency agreement, consider what happens now in month 2. Let's assume they run the same ads at the same times on the same prime stations and generate the same 13 new clients in that second month. Again, they make an additional $2,600 for that month. However, they also continue to receive the same $2,600 they made from the first wave of clients that they generated in month 1. Remember, they're taking this ongoing revenue stream in exchange for providing you with their prime ad spots, and they aren't charging you up front for that advertising. Under this arrangement, you only pay the cable company for the results they produce. If they run the ads and no clients sign up, they get nothing. That's why this is called a contingency agreement. It's contingent on the cable company generating results for you. And in exchange for the risk they're taking, they also get a bigger reward when they do produce results. But here's what you want to look at carefully. This arrangement may look great to you right now. After all, you have zero risk in this arrangement and apparently everything to gain. But you also need to realize that on average, your typical coaching client remains with you for 18 months. So in 18 months, here's what your numbers now look like. Over 18 months, the cable company, averaging 13 new clients per month, has now produced a total of 234 new clients for you. No single coach can handle that many clients at once on their own. But second, that cable company is now making $608,400 in month 18. Remember, they continue to receive $2,600 every month for each group of 13 new clients they generate. In month 18, there are now 18 groups of 13 clients each. However, you're making $912,600 off those same clients, and you haven't spent a cent on marketing. So here's what I'm trying to say. In this example, obviously the coach would have been far better off just paying the cable company to run the ads, even if they weren't primetime ad spots. As the coach increased their cash flow, they could have moved their ad placements into the prime spots and still come out way ahead financially. However, if you don't have the money to spend initially on advertising, a contingency agreement is something to consider. And in light of the current desperate times for most media companies, a contingency agreement is something they may consider, providing you can show them realistic numbers that show them that this arrangement is a win-win scenario for all involved. So consider all of these various options when it comes to negotiating with media reps. Just keep in mind that you're the one that holds the power in today's negotiation process. Now, in our next presentation, I'm going to continue to outline additional strategies you can use to get killer advertising deals. We'll focus on different ways to buy advertising in bulk and then discuss several bargain shopping strategies. These strategies will enable you to use the awesome power of the media to position your business in front of your target prospects and explode your revenue and profits.